I mentioned in the first lesson, first session, that what Emma is providing here is the instructions that are the basis for the whole New Thought movement. And the New Thought movement went in two directions. One has been called the feminine and the other has been called the masculine, because one has been about relationships and healing and the other has been about business and creativity. Okay? And so the Napoleon Hill world, the Wallace Wattles world, the Charles Haanel, which is the book I didn't bring in, are all in what has been called the masculine arm of New Thought. They are all preaching lesson 4. Okay, they are all saying you need to get to a place where you see that goal so clearly that you don't see anything else. Right? Isn't that what lesson 4 is? You have to have a mind firmly set on what it is you are creating so that there is no impediment to that. There is, in this one in The Science of Getting Rich, which this is my translation, and I also translated the Charles Haanel book, The Master Key. In both of them, they are saying, get to the place where you can see where you are going so clearly that if you were to look at the things between you and it directly, they would be obstacles, but by looking at it with your eyes firmly set on it, steadfastly facing this thing you are heading for, they are simply hurdles to jump over. All right? So that whole line of thinking is the same material, simply applied in the world of business. And so the movie The Secret was based on the 2 books, The Master Key and The Science of Getting Rich. And that whole world, the Napoleon Hill world of, and Nightingale Conant and all that material, if you got into any of that business building stuff, is the, quote, masculine arm. I talk about
Dale Carnegie would be
Dale Carnegie is too. He's part of that. Positive thinking in the business world. When people apply Norman Vincent Peale in that world, that's what they're doing. And by the way, Norman Vincent Peale studied with Emmett Fox, who was ordained by Nona Brooks, and I mentioned her last week as one of Emma's, students of students, a grand student, if you will. So it's the same lineage. It's great fun that was in place. So just to be aware, when someone comes in and says, well, I'm not interested in that woo-woo stuff, you can say, I'm learning the teachings that led to all of that material. That whole success material that is focus on the goal and focus on the thing you are making happen so that the appearances don't get in your way.
So if I take a goal of world peace, is that too big a chunk?
I would start with inner peace. That's once I get inner peace, then I can make a difference. And actually, if we go back to the book Power versus Force, the David Hopkins books, one of the things he says is, as you move up the emotional scale, where your vision of what divinity is and your emotional state and your basically the chakra you're operating out of move higher and higher up, you affect more and more people. So when you get to the point where every time you see someone, you're only getting love, as Linda experienced with that woman yesterday, or earlier this week, or when you get to the point where you think of an administrator that you have issues with, and you only see how this person is bringing the good, that's the only thing you're allowing. And that's what Gandhi did with Mountbatten. He operated on the assumption that Mountbatten's deepest interest and concern was the well-being of the Indian people. And he only reminded him that that's what he wanted over and over again. That's what he did, and that's how he did it. So when we're clear, we affect more and more people. Gandhi, at the height of his clarity, was affecting, according to David Hawkins' measurements, 500 million people, simply by being him. All right? So world peace is not impossible.
Right.
Yes,
do it.
Love it.
It seems so wonderful, for lack of a better term. Why aren't everybody doing it?
Because they don't know, and because the media is constantly telling us we're powerless and we have nothing we can do about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, even I've been told that Marianne Williamson won the Democratic debates.
Oh, yeah, she's great. It's so much fun to have
Oh,
her there.
a few days beforehand, she was telling Stephen Colbert, she was being so thoroughly marginalized by the Democratic Party, she would be lucky to be able to say more than 2 minutes worth of stuff in the whole thing. So something shifted, and I think the shift was around people's consciousness and her consciousness, because she hasn't taught Emma. She's taught the Course in Miracles, but she's also practiced unity, and she's keeping her consciousness at that highest level. But she's not buying what the media says. She keeps going with the truth, capital T, as well as she can.
Okay, thank you.
One of the exercises was the Lord's Prayer and to
Rewrite it.
rewrite it. The last section really spoke to me. And I said, and never let me be tempted to choose appearance instead of spirit, lest I become tangled in the snare of illusion.
Woo! That's lovely.
Yeah.
And I know that Callista rewrote it in a way that works for her. Do you want to share any of that with us?
I don't have that paper.
It's fine.
It's on-
It's fine. It's on my emails.
Yes.
All right. So
thank
did others rewrite the Our Father to meet your needs? A little. Good. Do you want to share any of that?
I don't have it with me, really.
That's fine.
So.
That's fine. So that's what you want to do. I mean, there are essential points there, right? And we can take those essential points and make the phrasing work for us. And Emma says that over and over again. Find your own words that mean this to you. And one of the reasons that it shifts and changes as we go through is who I am the next time I go through it is different. And so I'm going to choose different words, and I'm going to see it differently. I'm going to experience it differently. And that's terrific. That's wonderful. All right. Are we ready to move on to lesson 5?
Why not?
So again, we have a title that's 2 different words from 2 different works, 2 different pieces of work, works, and the word of faith. Okay? The first paragraph is a summary of lessons 1 through 4, which is kind of cool. There are 4 ways to deal with the principles announced in truth. 1 is thinking deeply about them. 2 is speaking them aloud, which we as metaphysicians don't hesitate to do. Then there is carefully recording the principles and their effects. Writing down what we know and or have experienced about them. That's the third. The fourth is living them, which we're sure to do if we think, speak, and write them. It's by faithfully doing all these things that we move on to the 5th ability, accomplishing the works of the Spirit that is us. Now, at the back of your workbook is something that I don't have in my notebook.
We want the 12. The I am.
The radiant I am. It's something called the radiant I am. There we go. It's the appendix, and it's the radiant I am. This is straight out of Emma's journals. It's also printed in the little book, Self-Treatments, the little black book with the gold on it that I often have out for sale. So if you want to have it in a little book, that's a way to get it. So this is her doing lesson 5. Okay, her practice of it. And the opening is, the first page in your appendix is the explaining of all of it. But I'm going to go to the second page. Am I going to go to the second page? Sure. And about the middle of it, that's page 186. Okay. She says, I am a power of life to the universe. Because I live, all that hath form or name shall live. There shall be no death, nor fear of death throughout the boundaries of eternal spaces, from this day forth forever. That which proceedeth forth from me is life and the power of life forever. As I breathe, the creatures of the sea and air and sands rise up refreshed, and there is no power against their life, and no ending of their life forever from this day forth. I am the unending, irresistible life of the world. I think this, I speak this, I write this, I live this. This is my ministry, which I am. Okay? And then she goes on, I'm the power of health, I'm the power of strength, I'm the power of support. And this is her practice of lesson 5. Okay? Something that we can be aware of. So it's the radiant I am. The I am of me is radiating all of this. The essence of all of us. The existence is the appearance of us, right? The essence is the core, is that which spirit is. So these principles are the I am of us. And so she's encouraging us to use that.
So she says, as I breathe, the creatures of the sea and air and sands rise up refreshed. That would apply to trees as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. All right, so this is an example of how in one of her more advanced stages, she was using what she's talking about in this first paragraph. Does that make sense? All right. So the next paragraph. Demonstrating new situations by thought or words is called works. And this is what Larry was looking for. What are the works that result from our doing this practice? Paul said, faith without works is dead, meaning that unless some kind of work takes place, we haven't believed anything. He's not saying that if you're not working in the world, you don't have any faith. That's how it's been misinterpreted in the Christian tradition.
Of course.
Right. She's saying if you're not seeing works, there's no faith there. All right? If you want to know what you believe in, look at what you're creating. Look at what you're experiencing. That's what you have faith in. That is the working of your faith. And that's why I want you to get rid of that belief. All right?
Sounds good.
All beliefs lead to their expression in our world. Our environments are our works. Whatever we have faith or confidence in becomes a quality of our mental character and gives out to others through our thoughts, through our speech, and through our writings. When our faith is strong, we don't have to deal with many situations in the environment. They take care of themselves and let us focus on the principles. Steadfastly facing the principle. Steadfastly facing the good. Steadfastly focusing on the good, which I know is omnipresent. Spirit gets to do the rest. I covenant with Spirit to do everything else. I covenant with Spirit to ensure that your neighbors are mutually supportive to your well-being and theirs too. Yes. All right. They take care of themselves and let us focus on principles. So works are the activity of faith, not of effort. The most amazing things to me are the times when I go, you know, it would be good if blank happened. But it's not mine to do. But it would be good. And within days or weeks, I get to read about blank happening, right? Or I see a YouTube, or I see something where blank is happening. It's so cool. I love it. So next paragraph. Our fifth lesson in the science of life finds us asking, do we believe that power operates through all things? Yes. Do we believe that power can be understood? If we can honestly answer that we do believe omnipotent power can be understood. Now remember, understanding is being one with and feeling and knowing in that deep way. Do we believe that it's worth our while to give all our mind and all our strength and all our life to finding out how to deal with it? Yeah. So when Jesus said, thou shalt love the Lord, and he was repeating Genesis, and Exodus, thou shalt love the Lord with all thy heart and soul and mind. Okay, that has been part of the Jewish tradition as well as part of the Christian tradition from 2000 BC, or at least 1200 BC. So are we willing to do that? When he's saying love the Lord, he's saying focus on and know the Lord so fully that you understand, because you cannot love that which you do not understand. Right? You can be adoring of, but you can't love. You can be devoted to, but you can't love. You can respect, but if you don't understand, if you don't feel that common, we're on the same page feeling, it probably isn't love.
Is that kind of what she was alluding to then in lesson 1 when she talks about the difference between the name of God and the address, the title
Good
that
job.
God has?
Right. When I feel the
quality
presence
versus the title.
Right, when I'm in that quality of the Shem, the essence, when I'm in that space of understanding, that is, we're in a shared foundation, we're in a shared commonality of experience in some way, even if it's just the tiniest little glimpse, then I have the capacity to work with that power. Right? That's why letting go of a person or an issue to the point where all I can see is the love and the light, that puts me in that place of that commonality, that understanding. Seeing and feeling from God's perspective is another way to think of it, right? As opposed to seeing and feeling from the appearances or from my mental framework of the past. All right? Now, remember in lesson 4, she says there is a way to generate faith. The next paragraph is a continuation of that idea. If our faith were small and we were to keep talking, keep thinking, keep writing these ideas absolutely true, our faith in those words, which lies hidden in our nature, would finally come forward. We already have faith in what is true, but it's been hidden by all this training we've been given growing up in this culture. It's been hidden by all these things we've told ourselves about our experiences living in this culture. It's been hidden by all the things the media tells us about who we are and what is. And our teachers have told us, and our ministers and priests have told us, and mea culpa, mea culpa. But it is there, so we're trying to uncover it through lesson 2 to get in touch with it, okay? It would finally come forward and make our conditions like our persistence ideas. All right? And then she gives some examples of that. And now I want to go down to the power of our thoughts. Our faith in wholeness and good shows up in our experience as well-being. In contrast, certain religious beliefs, though it's not widely known, encourage the appearance of sickness and suffering. And this is what Phineas Quimby discovered back between 1830 and 1860, when he was doing the application of these ideas in the world. That when people would call in and they had a set of symptoms, almost invariably it was tied to something that some minister had told them, or that they had read in the Bible, or someone who had been teaching them Bible studies had focused on. And so he would have to show them in the Bible where that was not true, where there was a greater truth that contradicted that, and have them focus their attention on that, and their symptoms would go away. He ended up being quite angry, and I think this is part of why he passed away. He was so angry at ministers and doctors for taking people who were in a half-trance state, walking into the presence of these authority figures, and convincing them of all these things that were wrong with them.
Right. They're good at that.
He was so angry. He wrote a lot around his anger around that. And so there was balance in the actual transformations that were going on. The first time I found about Quimby, there are 12,000 documented ceasing of symptoms from Quimby's work in 12 years. That's 1,000 people a year. And I was blown away that nobody had ever heard of him.
Wow.
When I first started doing this work, nobody knew who Quimby was. He was a chapter in a very thick, difficult to read textbook. And it was like, really? So I started chasing him down, and that's part of what put me on the path of these teachings. Yeah. And then Emma comes along with 11,000 in 20 years, between 1886 and 1906. Woo! Right? All right, so we keep going. And she gives examples on that, but I'm going to go to the next paragraph. Our faith also sets our mind to a particular tone. And when we meet people, they feel our mental tone with their mind. If they've thought along similar lines, they respond gladly. If they've thought differently, they may feel mentally opposed to us. But if we don't falter in our faith, then the constant sounding of our tone will break down the barriers of their opposition, as Joshua's trumpets broke down Jericho's walls in the Old Testament. So we just gently be who we are. That's all we ever have to do. Be our essential self. And slowly but steadily, because who we are being, our essence is common to all beings, and that faith is under all of these other thoughts, then that begins to become evident not only in us, but in the people around us. And generally, the people around us will either go, you know, I have to move to so-and-so, right? Or they'll go, can I have some more, please? One or the other. And it's fine either way, because the people in our lives are just the symbols of the love. They are not the source of the love. They are just the means by which we're experiencing it. So when someone so that we've been having a regular phone conversation with and maybe a meal with on a regular basis, goes, I need to be doing that for what, they're going somewhere else, or they just can't show up for whatever. We need to not grieve that. We need to bless them on their way. They're on their own path. It doesn't happen to be ours. But they obviously have received the seed because they're feeling inclined to do something different from what they have been doing, right? And we are experiencing the structures that were built of a previous set of beliefs. We're watching them fall apart so the new structures can come forward. The new friendships, the new relationships, the new activities that are ours to do in our own way. And that's how life is. It's a coming together and falling apart, and a coming together and a falling apart. And it's pretty exciting if you can just relax into it.
I wanted to back up to the
Sure.
bottom of the previous paragraph.
Oh, okay.
If one has a strong belief in inheriting illness
Yes.
from one's ancestors, that belief may be the whole mental cause of a physical disorder.
Yep.
It was that awareness that woke up Myrtle Fillmore.
Yep, it was. It was, and E.B. Weeks taught it as part of lesson 1 in 1886,
Okay.
June of 1886. She's the last sentence of the paragraph, the first one below power of our thoughts, illness from one's ancestors.
Oh.
Okay, many of us have been taught that we inherited illnesses or tendencies toward illnesses, and yet, when kids are adopted into families, the adopted kids get the same illnesses. Excuse me? This is from morphogenetic field. This is not a DNA issue, right? So we need to recognize that may or may not be the case in our particular case. And Myrtle took it the other step, which was through what E.B. Weeks was doing, because it was lesson 1. I am a child of God. Therefore, I cannot inherit anything from my physical parents, right? Because my parent is God. No one else is my parent. And Jesus says that. You have no father on earth. You only have one, who is in heaven. That's it. The person that was the means by which your soul took on form has nothing to do with who you are, except as you let them. Thank you for bringing that up. All right, so the next paragraph at the bottom of 76 is, the world that we experience is the exact record of our thoughts. Period. I know. Whoa. I know. And for me, I almost invariably, for years it was about 3 weeks. I would have a series of thoughts, and within 3 weeks I'd start seeing it show up. It's more and more short now. It's often a few minutes. But what I am experiencing is so clearly showing me what I am thinking. And a lot of it is what we call synchronicity. We have a thought, and in the next few hours or days, there it is, right? We wonder if something is, and in the next few days or hours, there it is. Or we think playfully, sure, it'd be fun to have a parking place, That happened to me this morning. Was it this morning? And someone pulled out right in front of the thing that I was going into, right? I'm pulling up. There's not a place in sight. Everything is filled, right? And I thought, wow, sure would have been nice to have a place. And bingo, I had a place. So yes, we can do this, all right? That is such an important line. And my daughter, when I was first doing this work and she heard this line, she took a dry erase marker and wrote it on the mirrored closet doors in her apartment. And she had about 10 of these kinds of things floating around. But this was, I remember, it was this color ink. It was the blue dry erase marker. And it was, the world I'm experiencing today is the exact record of my thoughts. And it's the mirror she's looking at, right? So it really was a very powerful thing. All right, if we do not like the world we live in, next sentence on that paragraph, or if we fret because it takes so long to bring thoughts of good out into our environment, then we do not like our thoughts. That is discord. And what I've said in the past is, if I've got this set of thoughts that are about my good and this set of thoughts about what I think the world really is, I'm going to get mixed conditions, and I'm going to get delays in the output picturing of the good, right? Because the mixed stuff is preventing it, slowing it down. So every time I am not experiencing the unfolding of heaven, it's saying there are thoughts here that are stopping that or slowing it down. So what are my thoughts? It's an opportunity to release those thoughts.
Is there a connection between this and in Course in Miracles, where it says miracles shorten the time?
Yeah,
frame?
To the extent that a miracle is the elimination of the feeling-based thoughts that prevent the experience. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
But it's only in that way. All right, next paragraph. There are thoughts that we can love greatly while we think them. They make conditions that we love. This is harmony. So this is part of why I encourage people to feel the good emerging. Feel world peace. Yeah, feel it. How can we not love that, right? It's part of what I do with a congregation. I feel the harmonious unfolding of the congregation into well-being, right? That feels good. It's harmonious in me. It evokes, generally, harmony in the congregation. As soon as I start having other thoughts and feelings, I see disharmony in the congregation. It's fascinating. It's scary, too. All right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Power.
Yeah. That's when it starts to be scary.
Yeah.
But the power of our thoughts in whatever we are focusing on. It can be any community. It can be any family. When I start to worry about my kids, they start calling me with problems. I need to not worry about my kids. I need to know that they are being fully satisfied and happy on their journey to their fulfillment. They're happy and healthy and satisfied on their journey to their fulfillment. And when I can feel that and know that, I get these calls. Mom, you won't believe this. It's marvelous. All right. So, words of faith. Words are clear indicators of the heart's beliefs. What the heart feels and believes, our words are sure to speak and our experience to follow. Okay, so I'm going along and I'm describing such and such an incident. The words that come out tell me what I really believe. All right? And that's why sometimes you'll see me catch myself. And I hope everybody catches themselves. And I hope if I don't catch myself, you'll call me on it. If I start describing something in terms that are other than I wish they were. Other than we all would find it heavenly for them to be.
That's why you ask us every once in a while, are you sure you want to claim that?
That's right. Are you sure you want to affirm that? Yeah. When someone says that such and such is the case, are you sure you want to affirm that? Okay, exactly. I want to affirm that we're all living in harmonious, mutually supportive, peaceful, loving environments. That's what I wanted. Yeah. That's what we deserve. That's what we came to Earth planning to create and experience. That's why there's this frustration when it doesn't feel like that, because that's not, we wanted it to be like this and it doesn't look like that. If we start getting into it doesn't look like that, we get more of what it doesn't, right? So we get back to, yeah, this is what I came to be and experience. This is why I'm here. Make sense? This is my fulfillment. Okay, so in the middle of that first paragraph under words of faith, therefore, if you're given to imagining how something would seem if it came to hurt you, cancel that. Imagining at once. For an imagining is determined to come out some way, even if only in our dream. Well, and I say for which we could be lucky and thankful if it's just in my dreams as opposed to in the body and in the life of all the people around me. All right? So if there is an uncomfortable dream or a dream that involves processes I would rather not see in the world, I have to go back and go, okay, what book, video, conversation, media announcement, whatever have I taken inward and am I playing out here? All right, next page. So here's the Jesus quote, okay? Jesus taught the importance by words in his fifth doctrine. By thy word thou art justified or condemned. If a man keeps my sayings, he shall never see death. Okay? So our word, what we are saying, describes who and what we are and what we are bringing forth in the world. So that's what he's trying to get. So our words are the outlet of our faith in the next paragraph. And the Moses quote was, let there be waters in the land. So as waters that have been released through the sluices of a dam flow down over the lands and make them fruitful, our words make our faith a working principle. Our words make our faith a working principle. And our words in the silence of our minds are as powerful as our spoken audible words. Now, sometimes we say them out loud so that our minds can hear them. But if we can say it silently, as intensely, as fully as we would say it out loud, it can be as effective. Does that make sense? Yeah. So next paragraph, or section, freedom. Our word is our own to do with as we please. Were you looking for something, Callista, before the Jesus thing? You looked like you were looking for something. Okay, so I'm down to freedom. Our word is our own to do with as we please. This is the free will. We have the right. We can do whatever we want with it. We can declare, doom and gloom. We can declare beauty and joy. We can declare whatever we choose. It's purely up to us, right? We cut our destiny and build our life with our words. Next sentence, the one mind principle is so generous and full of faith that it takes for granted that if you say you are ignorant, you must want to experience ignorance. Every time you say, I don't know, whoops, really? Or, how could I know that? Whoops. Or, gee, I wish I knew. Any of those things. You are declaring ignorance. Do you want that? I know. we are so in the habit of saying these things.
Conversations, I mean, that's a
Yeah.
hard thing not to say sometimes.
Exactly, it is. It requires discipline. There is really only one discipline in the world. It isn't whether you eat right or act right or do anything right. It's that you think in alignment with these things and your words are in alignment with these thoughts. That's the only discipline. Everything else falls from that. We will tend to choose that which is heavenly when we start doing these things without any other things happening. Yes, ma'am.
And I'm having a struggle.
That's fine. Do you care to share?
I don't know. I'm distracted,
Uh-huh.
and I'd like to share something.
Sure. Ah! You want?
Oh, you don't want me to click it, okay.
Ah!
Thank you.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh my goodness. Are you okay with not having one in your hand?
Yes.
All right. So for those who are listening and didn't quite see this, one of the people in the room had a clicking highlighter that was distracting someone else, and so the someone else handed her an unclicking highlighter. That is beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you for making your world more heavenly. And thank you for being willing to take it.
Thank you.
All right. So the one mind is so generous and full of faith that it takes for granted that if you say you are blank, then you must want to be that. Whatever, fill in the word. If you say you are beautiful, you must want to be that. If you say you are fat, you must want to be that. If you say you are sick, you must want to be that. Whatever the word is, that's there. Right? If you say you are healthy, you must want to be that. I am healthy. I am the very embodiment of well-being. Yeah. Yes. And that's part of what she does. She negates the possibility when you get up in the morning and you claim the truth. All right. There is no richer heritage, the next paragraph, than the God-given power of the Word. No richer heritage than the God-given power of the Word. Next paragraph, people of faith walk through a ward apparently full of infectious disease, convinced that the power of God is flowing through them and blessing all they see, and come out without illness themselves, having healed at least a few others. And that, she gives a specific example, the plague years, when people used to go into countries where plague was happening, or into leper colonies. And they would go in so full of the spirit of life and love, and bestowing that on people and bringing gifts, that they would be totally impenetrable as far as infection goes. There was no way infection would come in. And my experience of that, not about infection, was there was a time when someone was trying to bring me down a notch or two and made me stand in front of a group of about 300 people and have them stare at me. And I was, and I could do whatever I wanted to in that moment. And what I chose to do, having grown up with a critical mom, I could have fallen into that, right? But what I chose to do was allow compassion to flow through me to them. And there was no way that any other kinds of thoughts were going to get to me, because this outpouring of compassion through me was like, so big, there was no way anything other kind of experience could happen. It was a huge experience for me, and a huge wake-up call to the power of allowing something to flow through us so fully, there's no way anything can get in.
There's a leadership training program called Landmark. And one of the exercises they do is that everybody sitting in the first row comes up onto the platform and faces the audience, and everybody in the second row comes up and faces the people in the first row. So you're directly opposite someone, eye to eye. And there's no word spoken. You just stand there and look at the other person eye to eye. And there's generally one of two reactions. People either feel very, very peaceful, or one of the two will just burst out into tears. And afterwards, you're asked, what did you feel? Why do you think this reaction happened, and that kind of thing. And the people who usually burst out into tears, the person standing opposite them was seeing nothing but how much they were loved. And they couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
They had never felt it before.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, experienced that.
Uh-huh. And having been through that, it makes Dances of Universal Peace easier for you to do too.
Mhm.
Yeah, because in Dances of Universal Peace, there are many times when you're standing eye to eye and just allowing that flow of love. It's part of the process. Yes. All right, I'd like to move to the top of the next page, and we're in the section Uncovering the Real World. And the end of that first paragraph, okay, we're all subject to truthful thoughts. We are in italics, and it's in the margin as well. We have exactly what we say we have in the world of appearances. All right, I'm at the top of 79 in the workbook. We have exactly what we say we have in the world of appearances. And the next paragraph, yet the spiritual or real world is not changed by our words or thoughts. It is the same changeless good, yesterday, today, and forever. And remember that thing that I gave you a couple weeks back, in the realm, right? In the realm of the material, change happens by material action. In the realm of the absolute, right? Nothing ever changes, all is perfect. There is no change, all is perfect. And that's what she's saying. In the spiritual or real world, right, the very last one, change is not possible, all is perfect. In that world, nothing is ever going to change, okay? The change happens as we change in the material. We can do it by material action, we can do it by thoughts in the metaphysical, and we can do it by being that which we truly are, the essence of ourselves in the mystical. So the spiritual or real world is not changed. All our faith and all our reasoning simply open our eyes to the real world. Okay, so one way to think of the real world is in the realm of the metaphysical, it looks like heaven. It is heaven. Everything that is heaven, that we think of as heaven, is the real world, as opposed to the material world, which is not. Okay? In the mystical world, everything is more or less formless. It doesn't have the beauty and the form and the perfect trees, the perfect homes, the perfect bodies that the heaven that we expect to experience would have, all right? And then in the realm of the absolute, there is no form at all, okay? It's just beingness. There is pure awareness. So when we're saying the real world, we're talking about the metaphysical world, the world beyond the physical, metaphysical, beyond the physical. And I'm going to say heaven and that real world are one and the same. So if it doesn't feel like heaven, it's not the real world. If I can taste it, touch it, and smell it, it's probably not the real world. But it can be more and more like the real world. Okay, this which I can taste, touch, smell, and whatever else hear and see is going to become more and more heavenly as I drop these other thoughts, right? Because I'm focusing on the presence of the good. My world is going to be more and more the presence of the good. And if you want to have examples of how that can work, watch the movie What Dreams May Come. Right? Because he has the thought and the shift happens, right? You can see that happening, you know, moment to moment in it. I haven't seen too many others, but the movie Solaris, Stanislaw Lem wrote the book. He's a Polish cybernetician. There are two versions. There's a Russian version that came out in the 70s, I think 73, and then there's an American version that came out in the 90s, I'm thinking 92. And both of these are, people have arrived, astronauts have arrived at this planet where when you have a thought, it takes form immediately. And there's a Star Trek Next Generation
Yeah, I was gonna
where
say there's-
Picard has that experience. His grandmother's sitting in the hallway of the Enterprise. I think it was his grandmother. Yeah, so yeah, they go through a realm where their thoughts become immediately into form. And that appears to be what most people experience in heaven. And Satguru, Jasi Vasudev, who's called Satguru, has a talk on manifestation, and he tells a story. He says there's an ancient story that the yogis tell of this man who went for a walk, and it was a long walk, and without his realizing it, he walked into paradise. Fortunate man. And it was a long walk, and there was a beautiful tree with a cushy, place to rest, so he laid down to rest under this beautiful tree. And when he woke up, he was hungry, and he started thinking of things he might like to eat, and they just all showed up in front of him, and he ate them. And then he was thirsty, and he thought of things he might like to drink, and they just all showed up in front of him. And then he started realizing, wait a minute, there's something going on here. And so he started thinking, now this is the tricky part. His notion of how this might be happening was that there must be genies or ghosts making this happen. He didn't assume it was angels or devas, right? Mm-hmm. He assumed that it must be something that was going to trick him. And so he said, there must be ghosts here, and they must be trying to trick me. And his notion of ghosts was that they were going to injure him, and so they started to injure him. And then he said, oh my goodness, I'm going to die. So he actually went through death sitting under this tree in paradise, because his thoughts came into immediate fruition. One of the beautiful things about what dreams may come is you get to see that even that can be turned around, all right, by thoughts of love and hope and possibility. All right? So what Vasudev Sadhguru says is that that tree has a name, and don't go looking for it in the forest. He says, because it is you. You are that tree. What you choose to think about is what you are bringing forth in your world. And he goes on to say, when your thoughts and your feelings and your spiritual understanding are all in alignment, it's instantaneous. And there you have it. The spiritual world or real world is not changed by our words and thoughts. It is the same changeless good, always. Those are the italics. And in the next paragraph, this realization demonstrates itself in our lives in many unexpected ways. If, for instance, we seem to experience hard straits with our business affairs, and we insist that it makes no difference to us in reality, this clarity may show forth in our healing power or in our own health. So it isn't going to necessarily be in the area that we are focusing on. Remember when I talked about the woman who had whose hips were getting worse and worse and worse, and then I got it that she needed to not be resenting her daughter's decisions, mm-hmm. And then within a few weeks she was fine, right? She went through the process she needed to go. This is the same thing. It may not be obvious that where we are thinking things are messed up is actually affecting us over here. But if you think about it, the guy who's all the time worrying about his business is going to have stomach or heart problems, right? Clean up his worry about his business, and his stomach or heart problems are going to come to the surface to be dealt with initially and then get dealt with. Does that make sense? They'll get cleared up.
The most graphic example of that I can recall is that I was in a group we were sharing, and this one person said they would like prayer for protection and safety because they were going to be driving by themselves, and they were sharing that they had done this. They'd asked for protection, and then they went on this trip, and the hood of their car while they were on the freeway just blew up in front of them, just raised up in front of them, and they couldn't see or anything, and they got off to the side of the road. They were fine. But she said, I asked for protection and safety, and I think you were leading the group, and it was like, because you had the fear that something bad was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so it did.
Mm-hmm. Your fear was your experience.
Yeah.
Where your feelings were became your experience. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, dear. And in all likelihood, they're pulling off, save them from something else. And that's been my experience. You know, the number of times I've been frustrated because I've been delayed by this or that, or have to go there, you know, and then I realize, oh, I missed that accident. I'm so glad.
Or the slide before the tunnel in
Right. Oh my goodness, that was amazing. Right. Okay, the last paragraph on 79, the soul. The soul is the divine I of each man, woman, man, and child. The doctrine of the soul is that while knowing all things and doing all things, it is identified with no thing. It is absolutely free. Somebody's, oh, that's the church phone. Interesting. Why would the church phone go off the hook?
Has it been off the hook for?
A week or two? I think she takes it off on Sundays. She may not have put it back on. Oh well.
It stopped.
It did. Okay, the soul doesn't care about money, business, or bodily conditions, for though it manifests itself only as good in all those. To the soul there are no works to be done. To the soul, it's all perfect. The I am of me knows only perfection. The ego self, the trained cultural self of me, generally only knows imperfection. So I have to train the cultural self, the one that has been trained by the culture to know imperfection, to see the possibility of perfection and to step into that possibility, to focus on the presence of the perfect reality and therefore to allow it to become the experience. Yeah? The soul doesn't have to do anything. It is it already. And there was a while when I was using this to get through some physical stuff, and I just went, this body is the perfect expression of this soul. It is the perfect expression of this soul. And that worked very well. The top line of the next page I love. We cannot fail when we daily speak the lofty principles of truth. Okay? And yep, there it is. So that, you know, these words are pointing to that truth. These principles are pointing to that capital T truth that is unknowable, but it's pointing us, it's moving us in that category of stuff. Does that make sense? And in the italics at the end, we were not meant to fail or be burdened. There is nothing to do to be free. The last sentence of that paragraph. We were not meant to fail nor to be burdened. And there is nothing to do to be free. Okay. Opening to the power, I'm just going to do a brief one on the second paragraph. It's human nature to wish to make others do what we think they should be doing. It's divine to see that their own way is their true way. That, yeah, as a mom, I really have to get that. Okay. All right, good point. Okay, next paragraph. Some people speak sharply of others for not going into the hospitals and prisons and accomplishing great works. This is a sign that these people believe God has given those others greater power than themselves. If we feel there is work to do, we may be certain that we are the very ones to do it. Okay.
Yeah, so strict.
But remember, the soul doesn't do anything. So there's something going on here, right? Next sentence. If we see, for instance, that crime increases and we want it cured, we say so. That very thought or speech is the signal for us to cure the crime of the world in the thoughts of our own mind. Whatever we may be doing with our hands are free. Our thoughts are free to go and take the hand of a man who is going to strike or lead to a hungry child to a place where she will get all she wants, or to lead a hungry child. So if someone Okay, I got to see this marvelous video. It's a TED Talk, and I mentioned it yesterday, by one of the prosecutors. I'm sure he's the DA right now in Boston. His name is Adam Foss, F-O-S-S, and he is saying, as the prosecutor, I have all the power over this person's life, far more than the judge. Because if I even arraign this person, they're in trouble for the rest of their life. Especially if I have proof that they've done what they're being accused of. He said, and I'm realizing I don't have to do it that way. And he demonstrates through a series of examples that by knowing that this is a person who has this set of circumstances, and that those set of circumstances can be modified to allow this person to become who they truly are, and using his power in the district attorney's office to make that happen, he can transform lives instead of putting another 1%. 1% of our population is in jail. It's just under 1%. It's like 0.85. This is
And
ridiculous.
60% of them are pre-trial detention.
And 85% are people of color.
Yes.
Yeah, and it goes on and on. Well, this guy is a guy of color. His dreadlocks are down to his knees.
Ooh.
I'm looking at him wondering, how is he moving that head? Right? Beautiful, beautiful man. And just absolutely clear. And his very last line is, and I know this because of what I did, and he listed what he had done before he got into being in law school. And he got to go to law school because someone did this for him. And he's passing it forward. And it's just beautiful. And he basically, his message is, you get to elect your DA. Sit down with the person who's running for office and find out what they're thinking their job is. And see if you can't change it. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
All right, so can you see how that's related to what's happening here? Right? He is thinking about these people in a different way. And he is reducing the criminal costs in his community, both from the person would have been trained to be a criminal in the system. All right? Now that's not there. The system is no longer having to pay for that person getting trained to be a criminal, right? So that cost is reduced too. And there's all these ways. And then this person gets to be a contributing member of the community, which reverses a whole bunch of things. And not only is that, is also going to be able to pay it forward to other people in the community. I mean, it's just one of those wonderful exponential things by shifting the thought from it's this way and it has to be this way to it could be like this. And my thoughts and my actions in alignment with those thoughts can make it happen. Beautiful. Adam Foss. It's a TEDx talk. It's in Vancouver, BC. Our thoughts are free to go and take down the hand of a man who's going to strike or lead a hungry child to a place where she'll get all that she wants. All right? I love what the food bank here in town does, and I love the work that you do, because part of what you are doing is bringing people into that place of being the volunteer where they are the giver of that which they thought they could only receive. And what that is doing for them, oh my goodness. Yeah? It's changing their way of thinking about who they are and their place in the world. Yes, thank you for doing that. And you know, we all have those kinds of opportunities and those kinds of situations where simply by knowing this person is not limited to what we thought they might have been limited to, right? That's first. And then being open to discovering if and what my role in that shift is, and then just moving forward with that thought. That person is this. Thank you. Yes. All right. The next paragraph on that one is people often wondering, looking at the phenomenal world, why things didn't change for the better immediately after they've spoken words of faith, right? And here's why. If you've always thought in terms of things coming right at some point in the future. Have someone who believes in doing everything now, speak scientifically, that is, use this concepts, to you. As you remember that all truth is now, your benefits show themselves to you at once. Yes.
Which brings me back to lesson 1,
Mm-hmm.
where they say, the good I am seeking. I don't say that anymore.
Right on.
I say, my good is my God. My good is my abundant health. I'm not saying I'm seeking it.
Well done.
Because
You-
she's basically saying, don't say that.
Right. Once you get past that, very good. So, and you could use have been, or the good anyone might be seeking. You can do any of that. But yes, my good is. And if you look at my notes, you're going to see no seeking in there. It's not in there anymore, hasn't been. The good I'm choosing to experience now is as close as I'll get to that. That was
Until now.
Well,
Until now.
well, I'm choosing to experience it now.
Now.
This is my choice now. You know, that was, you know, my good is seeing the world, da-da-da-da. Yeah, is another one that I've chosen. But yes, the good I'm choosing to experience now is another way. Thank you, Sarah, for saying that. That's so important. All right. All truth is now. All truth is now. In reality, in the heavenly reality, it's all happening now. Only my mental framework, my past beliefs, the experiences that have been based on those past beliefs would ever prevent me from experiencing heaven now. All right. I'm going to move into the transforming the body. You can spend time with these other paragraphs in your week. In the principle of mathematics, we get off track if we say 5 plus 3 equals 10. God is the principle of life. Go contrary to it, and you get off the track of life. So what happens when we think of material things as reality? Bodies, of course, with all sorts of troubles and pains. Okay? As soon as I think this stuff is what's real, this stuff, then what I will experience is more of this stuff. And more of this stuff following the principles I have been taught about this stuff, including body's age. Really? That's just an idea. Do I have to have that experience? There are enough reports of enough people who did not age. And my most recent one is Ninon de L'Enclos, Ninon de L'Enclos, who is a contemporary of Louis XIV, who at the age, and there's a drawing, a picture of her with gray hair, and her face is like she's 20. And apparently she got up to 90 and never looked older than her mid-30s. Okay? And then there's another contemporary of Louis XIV who was actually before Louis XIV. He's considered sometimes to be the strange man who showed up in the Independence Hall while we were deciding whether to sign the Declaration of Independence. The Comte de Saint-Germain. The Comte de Saint-Germain. The Count of the province of Saint-Germain. The Comte de Saint-Germain is not Saint-Germain. And I always get frustrated with people who think he is one and the same. Saint-Germain is from the 4th century. The Comte de Saint-Germain is from the 16th through the early 19th century. The late 1500s into about 1810, 1820. There is documented presence, documentation of his presence off and on through a 200-year period. Okay? Now that is quite apart from the folks who show up in the life and teaching of the Masters of Far East, which is, I referred to it as fiction in one comment, but it's the journals that have been written as this wonderful story, but it's the journals of these guys who encounter these beings who've been around for centuries. And then there's Babaji, Yogananda's teacher of his teacher of his teacher. So Lahiri Maheshai taught, Yukteswar taught Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda, and Babaji, the original Babaji, who is from the 14th century and is said to look 18 years old and shows up in people's lives, he'll often show up at the Kumbh Mela, is the guy who taught Lahiri Maheshai. So, and that would have been about 1830. So, we have a lot of suggestions that aging is not necessary, that it's possible to be quite young regardless. And I remember there was a mathematician, computer scientist, he was originally a physicist that had come to this country in the late 40s after World War II and was involved in the work of cybernetics, and that's how I got to know him. And he moved to an area I was teaching in when he retired. And here was this guy who had been sitting at a desk, at a computer terminal for years and years and years. And he was a retired college professor, so he was in his late 60s. And he decided that he and his son were going to build their home. And they bought a piece of land up in the hills in the San Francisco Peninsula, above Pescadero, for those of you who know. And he hand cleared all the poison oak, all the live oak, all of the stuff off the land, all the whole driveway, and the whole site for the house, and the site for the septic. Hand cleared that. Within a year and a half, that man's body was that of a 45-year-old. Because he was living an active life in the body. I mean, he was ripped. And it was amazing to watch that happen, that this man who was this old retired college professor became this very youthful, very powerful presence because he stopped thinking about being an old college professor and just thought of doing the job at hand, right? So just be aware, okay? What happens when we think of material things as reality? Bodies, of course, with all sorts of troubles and pains, but they are nothing. They must disappear for the true conditions, the real world, to be experienced. Okay, I'm still in that same paragraph of transforming the body. If we were involved deeply in a mathematical problem or a musical composition, we wouldn't carry healing power, but at the first note of the doctrine of metaphysical science within our mind, we're filled with healing presence. Okay? I'm going to go to the third paragraph on 82. Even the mathematician, focusing constantly on the truth of his calculations, changes the shape of his body. And you, by repeating the 12 propositions of the science of life, and those are the 12 that we looked at in lesson 4 at the end, will change your entire life conditions. If you can set the coloring of your face to pale or blushing by your thought, you can set crooked bones or teeth by your thought.
I thought that was an excellent example.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And for me, it's particularly interesting because the middle canine, lower canine on my mouth used to be hidden behind the other teeth. And the upper incisors used to tuck backwards. My mother was so afraid that they would be buck teeth, and she kept doing everything she could to keep me from sucking my thumb when I was 3 and 4. And they didn't, instead they started coming inward. And so I have had this experience of adjusting crooked teeth. Wow. It's amazing. I never went to an orthodontist, not once. Yeah. It's fine. It happens when we allow it. Yes? All right, next paragraph. Clearly, we make our own happiness or unhappiness as far as this world of phenomena is concerned. You yourself are the arbiter of your own destiny. Why give in to the old beliefs? You're not obliged to do so, right? You're not obliged to believe that you as a being are liable to misery. There will come a moment when you comprehend how closely related your thoughts are to your world. Remember that the world of phenomena is the unconscious mind made manifest. There is a reason why this cover image is the iceberg. Right? There's a reason for that. We can chip away at this part all we want, But that's where the work is. All right. The last paragraph in the whole lesson, my words are life, said Jesus, so keep some of the words of truth running in your mind continually. Keep some of the words of truth running in your mind continually. It's like a mantra. And you can make up music for it. You know, you can do whatever. The idea is whenever I catch myself thinking anything other than this stuff, think this stuff. And, you know, there are times when I'll spend 2 or 3 hours in bed wide awake, right? But the body is not getting up to do anything, so the mind gets to do what it gets to do. What am I going to use those 2 or 3 hours doing? Am I going to use them to churn on world problems or issues, or am I going to use them to focus on some of these ideas? Yeah? All right, Friday mornings, next page, the practice. On this 5th morning, we focus on speaking the word and allowing the works of truth to unfold in our lives. And that's what you were talking about when you saw that, which you hadn't seen before. You're allowing the works of truth to unfold in our lives. So, she's using the 4 things that in the Christian doctrine, anyone who accepts the gospel, the good news that Jesus the Nazarene offers, are going to be able to do. And before we read it, it's to preach the gospel, heal the sick, cast out demons or demonic passions, and raise the dead. Okay, those are the 4 things. There is no reason why any of us is not doing that, except we don't believe we can. And the reason we don't believe we can is we've been told. It's not possible. Only the saints can do that. Only Jesus can do that. Only God can do that. Only the priests can do that. Whatever. We don't get to do that. So what she is saying, we need to break through those beliefs and affirm this truth. Are you ready? As divine mind, which I am, I preach the gospel, heal the sick, cast out demonic passions, and raise the dead. I work the works of good, so divine power works through me and as me to will and do what is mine to do, according to the teachings of Jesus. The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the loving Creator that dwells in me does the works. Woo!
What are demonic passions?
All right, so it's demons in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And so we use the phrase demonic passions because it is those habits of behavior that sometimes seem to take over, whether it's rage, whether it's lust, whether it's covetousness, you know, whatever it is that is so intense that it seems like there's nothing that the person can do about it. So basically, I can ease mental illness is another way to say it. Yeah, I can restore mental health. Does that make sense?
In today's terms, here and now,
Mm-hmm.
what is raise the dead?
What it says. So there's 3 ways one can be dead. And this is, my first Unity pastor was this wonderful woman, African American, grew up in Georgia, studied with Barbara King in Florida. And she came to an all-white suburban community, and she says, I'm here to raise the dead souls of you white people. I loved her dearly. Her mom had named her Vicky, V-I-C-I, which is the Julius Caesar, I conquered. She was a fabulous teacher. I loved working with her. So that was an interesting experience. So that's one. We raise the dead by finding that which has died in this being that we are with. And it may be that just curled up and went away out of fear, or they curled up and went away out of torment, PTSD. It may be that they're just shut down. over habitual shutting down or not being, depression.
Depression.
Yeah, depression is a good example of that. When we've repressed our expression too many times, the subconscious says, oh, okay, you don't get to express anymore, and everything goes numb. That's depression. It's not the same as sadness or grief. Okay?
Would that also be similar then to Alzheimer's and memory
Sure.
issues?
The idea that, and those overlap, the demonic passions and raising the dead. A lot of people who go into what we call Alzheimer's or dementia have just had enough.
Yeah.
They've had enough of this world, and they'd rather they were living in the world of their teens and 20s. And so that's where they focus all their attention. In some cases, it's a chemical issue. I've had 2 cases now where someone had surgery in her 80s, and the anesthetic that they gave her shut down her short-term memory. Twice I've seen that happen. It's been fascinating, and never recovered in 10 years after that. So they spent the rest of their life not having their short-term memory. And I don't think the anesthesiologists are aware of that, because they don't get to see the effects,
They
right?
don't see they don't follow it.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Yeah.
It's an issue.
It is. It is. So, but as one knows the truth that the person is present there, and what was interesting is if I was in the room, she was capable of virtually everything. She didn't always remember my name, but she knew who I was, and she could, no one would know there was a memory issue here. And then she'd get back with just her sister or just whoever, and she wouldn't be there. And I had the hard time with that. I couldn't be there all the time, and I hadn't yet mastered enough of these skills to be able to know the truth for her full time. But I also she was very, very happy. She was so happy in the condition she was in. It was like she was in the present, loving the present every moment. And how could I take that away from her? Really?
Because that would be my question, how is it maybe people are choosing these states because they're...
I don't lay my path on them.
Right.
Exactly. So if I know the truth, this person is fully present and making their choices, and I support them in their choices. And that's what I'll say to anyone who's at a life or death choice. You get to make the choice. I'll support you, whichever direction you choose. Okay? Not my decision whether you choose life or death. My decision is to make it, my job is to have the path be as satisfying and fulfilling as possible. Yeah?
And that's sometimes a very difficult decision.
I know, love. I know. And you know what you did? You chose to stay here, even though he chose not to. We're a little past the first anniversary. Thank you, dear. You chose to allow him to make his choices, didn't you? And didn't he choose to do it in a very, very easy way?
Yeah.
It could have been so much awfuler. Yeah. I didn't mean to push that button, love. It's okay. I get that. Sometimes we need the buttons pushed too, to give ourselves freedom to experience and express. Do you want some tissue?
Okay.
All right, we'll keep going. So, raising the dead, the next piece is, let's say, may I talk about the first few moments there?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So there was her husband on the floor. And I asked him, what do you want? And he chose to leave the body in that moment. I watched him leave the body, okay? He knew he had the option to stay. He knew he could rely on me to help him do that. And he chose to leave the body. It was one of the most beautiful things I've seen to watch him do that.
And his last words?
I want the exact...
I want the absolute truth.
And then he clutched and keeled over. Yes. Amazing being that man was. Is.
Yeah.
Is in many ways. So the choice, we always have that choice in every moment. If in many cases it's a situation where this should not be happening, this was a freak This was not the end of a fulfilled life. This was, you know, a 3-year-old who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it is clear that this person needs to continue to do what they are doing. Then you can use some of the practices that are in lessons 7, 8, 9 to know the truth, regardless of the appearance of the stopping of the heart or the stopping of the brain or the whatever. And that person will usually choose to follow the lifeline of your truth, okay, back into fulfilling what they came here to do. Sometimes they're done. They fulfilled it. They are done and they know it. But if it's one of those situations where they either need to have an NDE, a near-death experience, or the whole family needs a big wake-up call, or any number of things, you know, people will get up off their deathbed when the person present knows the truth, that they are not dead, they are alive, and there is far more life for them to experience. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Callista acts like she knows this. She's had this experience. I love it.
When I had the open heart surgery,
Mm-hmm.
I at one point was looking down on the process, and I was not floating, but just up above near the ceiling looking down. I saw all the tubes, I saw the bypass process, everything. And I got really definite and said, I'm not done yet. I want back in there. And the surgeon later told Larry that normally when they flip the switch to switch from bypass back to letting the heart be the pump, there's just a slight hesitation. Even on the most successful things, he said as soon as they flipped the switch, bam, my heart was beating. There wasn't even a slight hesitation. And I didn't realize that until about a week and a half, 2 weeks after the surgery. I was at home, and I woke up in the middle of the night and sat straight up in bed, which was something I was not supposed to do, because I thought I was having a dream, and then all of a sudden it occurred to me it wasn't a dream, it was a memory.
That's beautiful. Thank you, dear. Yeah, you're right. My similar kind of experience was much, much, much younger. And it took someone coming into the recovery room saying, no, really, we do love you. Yes, we do need you here, for the body to say, okay, I'll stay. So, thank you, dear. All right, let's look at the metaphors. Numerology. Numerology is a powerful, powerful thing. If you haven't played with the numbers, you might want to enjoy it. 5 was a living number to the ancient Hebrews, signifying the representative. Jacob, or Israel, the same person's son Joseph, was the representative of the Pharaoh. Okay, he was the one who was sold into slavery and then worked, was discovered in the prison and became the Pharaoh's right-hand man. He was the representative of Jesus, and he was, by the way, the 5th son. Jesus represented God the Father to his disciples. Representatives or deputies must wait for the authority to act. So 5 is a number of expectation, of hesitancy to act. If in the tarot card, in the 5 of Cups, there's a man leaning on his staff, and there are 3 empty cups on the ground in front of him, and that's what he's looking at. And right behind him are 2 full cups, and he's not seeing them, right? But if he can allow himself to be in that expectancy rather than in that hesitation, then he can see them. Does that make sense? So the 5th lesson, I'll go ahead with the full paragraph. 5 is also the number of redemption. It took 5 oxen to redeem a thief who had stolen one. It took 5 stones in David's slings to redeem Israel from Goliath of the Philistine. Jesus took 5 loaves to redeem the hunger of the 5,000. The 5th lesson is a working doctrine. Vision works on the mind, mind works on the body. In 5, all labor is successful. When the 5th angel sounds in Revelation, the senses are darkened so God can be experienced. So I was just chatting with someone this morning who has been experiencing food sensitivities to the point where the only thing being eaten is a little bit of meat, a lot of nuts and seeds, a little bit of fruit, and a lot of vegetables. It's salads and other vegetables, and it's a little bit at a time. So basically, the person's put themselves on a keto diet, and that without even realizing that. And I noticed that, in this weather we can see each other's bodies a little more clearly. There was a short sleeve T-shirt, and I went, "Oh my goodness, what's been happening to your body?" And the response was, yes, the diet has changed, but I have been noticing that whenever I see someone in a video or a photograph that is moving in a particularly healthy way, or the body is structured in a particular way, I am putting myself in that body. I'm merging myself in that body. And I thought about that. There's a guy named John Gabriel, and he published something called the Gabriel Method. And that's exactly what it was. And way back in the 80s, Think Yourself Thin was the same thing. It was get clear about the body that feels like your body, and be that if you are not feeling like the body you have is what you wish to be. All right? So we tend to look in the mirror and go, oh, I'm stuck with this, No, unless you don't have that issue. Or we look at models and go, well, that's impossible, right? Or, right? Or we look at Olympic athletes going, I'm not sure I want to go that far. But there might be some place in there that looks and feels right. So just something to be aware of. The next one, the stone, sardonyx, the shining stone. Sardonyx is the stone of understanding. The tribe of Israel, whose stone this is the high priest, in the high priest vestment is Issachar. Not everyone knows there was a tribe of Israel called Issachar. It is the stone of representation, bearing the seal of the Pharaoh. Have you seen some ring seals? They're shaped like this, right? And then they've got the stone that has the carving of whatever, and you almost can't see what the actual stone is. It's shining, it's glistening, it's like it's a diamond, but it isn't quite, and it has the carving. That's the sardonyx of the deputy. And it turns out someone's been doing some excavations in an area that has to be restored back to farmland every season, but they found 9 seal stones of Joseph representing the Pharaoh in this excavation. That was so exciting. Yosef ben Yaakov is what it says. It's marvelous in hieroglyphs.
So my familiarity with the word sardonic is like a masking grin.
The sardonic grin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's halfway evil, halfway humorous. Right. Well, this is onyx
Okay.
plus sardinius.
Oh. Okay. It confused me when I read it.
I know, me too. Why, I don't know what it is. All right, and the apostle is Thomas, and this is Thomas Didymus. Ta'om Yuda translates into English as Judas, the twin. There were actually 3 Judases in the 12. Okay, Judas Iscariot, Judas, I forgot which the other one is, and then Judas the twin. But he was in Greek, it was Thomas, which also means twin, by the way, Ta'om. So his double name indicates he may have been a twin of one of the disciples, even some say of Jesus, that he was the twin of Jesus. From the gospel story of Thomas's unwillingness to believe Jesus' resurrection until he saw the wounds, we get the phrase doubting Thomas. The beatitude is blessed is the merciful. Okay? And Thomas is the reminder that the divine is always merciful even when we disbelieve. And the phrase that is given him is, Lord, I believe, help me in my disbelief. Help me in my disbelief. Help me let go of my disbelief so that I can live the faith. Now, this Thomas is the one who is said to have gone to India, and, it's like the 12 disciples were apostles. 12 disciples became the 12 apostles. Well, 11 did, and then there was a 12th one added. And they were all sent to different parts of the world. Thomas was literally sent by means of the Silk Road to India. He was down around Goa, India. And in that area, he established Christianity. And when I was in India in April, I met people who were descendants of that branch of Christianity. They had been there for 2,000 years as Christians. So that was kind of cool. All right. So that's lesson 5. And you're going to do this week, right? We've got 7 days, and you're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I recommend do 4 and 5 again. We've done 1 and 2 plenty. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5. All right? And then we'll start Thursday, lesson 6. And we will record this. This is going on my computer as soon as we're done, and I may even today get it up because I have learned the system.
Good job.
Thank you all so very much. It's such a delight to work with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.